passing laws governing interstate commerce that have nothing to do with interstate commerce. Having a standing army is unconstitutional, if you read it correctly. The Constitution provides for a navy, and that's it. The founders understood that the way we won the Revolutionary War was not through a large standing army, but the militias, and they understood that was the proper way to defend a republic, was through militias. The only thing you need a standing army for is offensive military action.
And so suddenly when the American people realized that the Congress, both the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, had become entirely unresponsive to the people, I think that made the people mad. I think people finally realized, hey, this is our government, this is our nation, and we're going to take it back. And I think that's what gave birth to the Patriot Uprising, the Tea Party movement.
If we were to look at a list of violations of the Constitution of the federal government, you could look at the Department of Education, you could look at the Department of Energy, you could look at recently the bailouts that have been passed. The federal government does not have the right to just print up money and bail out companies, no matter who they are, whether it's financial service companies or automakers or anyone else, and obligate the taxpayer.
I do believe that the people of Missouri will overwhelmingly approve House Joint Resolution 88. If and when that happens, I'm sure that the federal government, the overreaching hand of the federal government, is going to sweep in and try to tell us that we've done something that we're not allowed to do. The bottom line is, sooner or later, there's going to have to be a showdown.
In the building behind me, we have a Health Care Act introduced by Jane Cunningham, Senator Jane Cunningham, and Representative Tim Jones. That it's a constitutional amendment for the state of Missouri, and if it is passed, and we firmly believe that it will be passed, it will throw up a wall to the federal government and essentially give the people of Missouri a choice of participating in the federal law if it's passed or not.
That's precisely one of the reasons that I've crafted Senate Bill 587 to permit the people, if they choose, to establish a commission wherein the state can review federal actions and seek a redress of grievances in federal court where the state finds that there is a federal infringement.
In appropriations last week, I asked Revenue, what does the federal government give the state of Missouri as far as percentage for us collecting the federal gas tax? And they said, nothing, Senator. And I said, so we collect that and we send them a check. Do they pay for the stamp, you know, on the envelope for the check that we sent them? No.
So when people speak of the word revolution, it does not always necessarily mean a violent overthrow of a government.
No, but unfortunately, throughout history, we've seen that happen over and over again.
That seems to be the overwhelming consensus, but a revolution can take place between the ears, as a friend of mine once said.
I think that's why the Department of Homeland Security is so concerned with militia members, demonizing militia members. They know that these people are educated on these topics.
I think that the Bill of Rights and the Constitution is only a list of things that the government can do. It is not a list of what the people can do. And that's very clear from what the founders, the framers of the Constitution intended. It certainly is not a list of the things that we can do. It may include some of those things, and it does, but it's not a list of the things that we can do.
Taught in our schools today is that there are two kinds of government. What they call positive government and negative government. You have positive rights and negative rights. Well, what's the difference? What they talk about, and I've got textbooks that say this, that the United States in the Constitution offers negative rights. And what they mean by that is that the Constitution starts out saying government shall not. And what it means is that in this country, government is supposed to be under control of the people, it's supposed to be limited, and we have very definite ideas that our rights we're born with, and government does not grant those rights. On the other hand, almost every single other country in the world, particularly the quote-unquote democracies, a lot of the democracies that came out of after the Soviet Union fell and so forth, all of their constitutions are what are called positive rights. It says the government shall. And what that means is that government grants you your rights, that, and whatever gang of thugs are in charge today decides what those rights will be.
Hillary Clinton announced that the U.S. would participate in what is now called the UN Small Arms Treaty. Now, this is being pushed by a great number of tin pan dictatorships, socialist states, and basically police states around the world as the way to control small arms trafficking. And Hillary Clinton agreed that the U.S. would be involved, obviously with the blessing of the White House.
So basically what this is it's an international treaty agreement that is going to limit the individual rights of gun owners in America. And now, correct me if I'm wrong here, a treaty has to be ratified by Congress, am I right?
There's no doubt. It takes 67 votes to ratify a treaty in the United States Senate, and that's going to be a tall order even for this White House.
The founders set up this beautiful system where you have the three branches of the federal government, the legislative, the executive, and the judicial, all filled with power-hungry men and women set against each other, always struggling for more power and control against themselves so they can never get together and oppress the people. That's called the separation of powers. And so each branch checks the other. But there's also a separation of powers at the state level. If you didn't like the rules in New York, you could move to New Jersey. If you didn't like the rules in North Carolina, you could move to South Carolina. If you didn't like the rules in Alabama, you could move to Texas.
My hot button issue is the First Amendment. And that's the thing that really got me fired up to even get involved in the political process in the first place. The violation of my First Amendment rights. And the biggest violation of our First Amendment rights comes through hate crimes legislation, hate speech legislation that attempts to limit our ability to have a voice and an opinion in the open marketplace.
The only protections we've ever had have been the rights we claim for ourselves. And if you look at the Revolutionary War, we had to say this is our right and this is what we'll tolerate and this is what we won't. Now, what caused the Revolutionary War was far less egregious than what they're doing to us now. I believe if we could roll the tape back to 200 years ago, our founding fathers would laugh at the debates we're having today. And they'd also cry at the idea that we're throwing it all in the trash.
They had just escaped tyranny. They had just escaped a government that had become far too powerful and had no regard for the rights of its citizens. And so when the Founding Fathers gave us the Second Amendment, you know, as many people like to say, the Second Amendment is there to make sure that the rest of the amendments, the rest of the Bill of Rights, is remembered.
We had two amendments, the 16th and the 17th, that were ratified that really destroyed the very fabric of state sovereignty. And this 16th Amendment being what most people understand as the income tax amendment, and the 17th is the one that changed senators from being elected as state representatives to actually being represented by the people.
As far as the 17th Amendment goes, the original intention of the Founding Fathers was for the senators to be appointed by the state legislature. This would allow for them to do a recall at any time. If the senators, say when they voted for the bailout, we could have immediately recalled them while the people were up in arms, where they were passionate about the issue. But what happens is this empowers central planning and strong central government, because now we have to wait for the next election cycle, and by then people have lost sight of what it was. They've lost distraction with our short-term attention spans now.
In our system of government, the states are to have the ultimate checkmate against executive abuse of power. Until we got the Federal Reserve Act and the 17th Amendment in 1913, the states appointed U.S. senators. The people elected the state legislators, and then they would send the U.S. senators to Congress. And so the states had full control over the Congress because they appointed the senators. When they began to elect the senators at large, the senators could now be taken away to Washington and bought off by special interest and by offshore banks and by the military-industrial complex. And that's when you see the real corruption setting in. It is the states that are above the federal government, because the states represent the body of the people, and those state legislatures represent the body of the people.
the same things came back through the environmental movement, and because they have used scare tactics, Chicken Little tactics, that the sky is falling, global warming, all of this, that if we don't do something about it, then we're going to lose our planet Earth and we'll lose our home and it's all destruction on us. All those scare tactics have gotten people to take their liberties and throw them on the bonfire like a good old-fashioned book burning, all in the name of protecting the environment.
The federal government gets and grabs hold of most of the power that they have throughout our history through tragedies, or very traumatic times, in our nation's history. The latest, of course, being 9/11, and the overreaching, of some of the law enforcement powers that the federal government has come because of fear.